Well, we begin today with just one question. What the hell is going on in the EFL Championship? We return today to look ahead to match week 3. Hopefully it won't be as unpredictable as the last one. All 24 teams in action. We're going to look ahead to the 12 fixtures, preview them, and hopefully predict a few more scores right than last time. Although, if we see many more 5-3s and bundles of away wins, it's going to be quite difficult to call, isn't it? If you want to play along, as always, get involved in the comments. Give us your score predictions for this weekend. If you beat or match my overall score for the match week, you will get a shout out when we return for match week 4. For now, though, before we go and look ahead to all of that, let's go and look back at a crazy week in the EFL Championship, because match week 2 saw the lowest average score ever recorded across the comments. The median score was 4 points. I only picked up 3, those for wins for Birmingham City, for Stoke City and for Hull City. Loads of away wins, loads of away goals. We'll talk about Derby Coventry. Surprisingly, nobody predicted a 5-3 there. It was an absolutely bonkers match week. So very hard to call, very low scoring. But as we mentioned, I only got 3, so a number of you did still beat me. So let's start with those level with me on 3. Mello, David G, Macca and Brian. All of you got 3 points. No perfect scores for any of us. On 4, it was Oliveira, Carl, Rob, Mick. Last week's winner, Bobby, and then Nigel, who got a perfect score, but 4 points for all of you. 5 for Sven and for David B. 6 for Mitchell, who remarkably got 4 of his on Sunday. 7 apiece for NK and Jake. 8 for Teo. And then just 5 of you in double figures, but only just in most cases. Stephen Adam, joint 4th place with 10 points. Joint 2nd, 2 of our regulars, Swifty and Chris, who were on 11. Again, an excellent effort given the scorelines. And even better, the winner, Peter, 12 points, 3 perfect scores. How on earth you've pulled that on a weekend like this, I don't know. A magnificent effort, but can you replicate it on the 3rd weekend as we look ahead to match week 3, starting on Friday night with Derby County versus Bristol City. 2 sides that were in very different games last weekend. Let's start with Derby Coventry, because my God, what happened here? Initially, Derby did really well to come back from 2-1 behind, that late first half penalty, early goal to go ahead in the second half, and you thought, right, this is going to be it now. But Coventry dominated the game for the most part. They had 20 shots, they had 10 on target. And for both sides here, some of the worst set piece and defending of crosses I have ever seen in my life. Set pieces looked a threat. Every cross looked like it was going to lead to a goal. It was just chaos. And from a John Eustace side that is so good at home normally, so solid. From a Derby side that relied on home points last year, it was just astonishing to watch. So in the end, neither team deserved to get anything out of it defensively, but Coventry had the more sustained attacking threat, and with both sides defending so poorly, unfortunately, Derby were going to end up on the wrong end of it. On the flip side of that, for Bristol City, not a huge amount of defending to do against Charlton. Had the ascendancy, dominated the game, but again, this is something we talked about with them. How are they going to adapt this year after finishing in the playoffs to having to dominate games, to having teams come and sit deep against them? Yes, a lot of shots, a lot of territory, but only 1 effort on target. Charlton ended up having a couple on the break, including a very good chance as well. And in the end, you're just left wondering, is it going to be easier for Bristol City when they're playing against the bigger sides in the division? So, a very difficult one to predict. If Derby defend anything like they did last weekend, then Bristol City will have a field day. But you're going to expect this one to be a bit different. Derby will surely be doing defensive drills most of the week on a training ground. Bristol City will be looking to hit on a counter away from home, although I think they are going to be given a bit more of the possession and the ascendancy. But can you trust Derby to keep a clean sheet after that one? I don't think you can. They've been in 2 very high-scoring games. They've let in 8 goals in 2 matches. Bristol City, yes, kept a clean sheet last week, but they looked a little ropey on the road against Sheffield United defensively, as much as they were a huge threat going forward. So I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline. We've got to calm things down a bit this week. I'm going to sit on the fence with a 1-1 draw to begin with on Friday night. As we move on to Saturday, and aside Bristol City were held by last weekend, it is Charlton Athletic at home to Leicester City. Let's start with Charlton, who, as we mentioned, we thought they were going to come and sit behind the ball, but they were so defensively robust. They were set up really well. They did have a little bit of a threat on the counter as well, which was nice to see. You want those Championship sides that have come up to be able to compete, and so far, Charlton have shown that they're going to be more than adequate at that. A really solid performance, had a good chance on the break in the end, but didn't offer up many great opportunities, which is something you've got to do when you're going away from home. So a great point for them and a good start, 4 points and 2 clean sheets. Whereas for Leicester, it's the same old issue, isn't it? They relied on the centre-halves to bail them out at home to Sheffield Wednesday because they couldn't take their chances. Yes, a huge benefit that Monga broke the Championship goal-scoring record as the new youngest one. However, Leicester City just didn't look like scoring. They had a lot of the ball, but when they gave up chances, they were poor defensively. And when they were creative, they were making half chances. They were having shots from distance. They weren't creating brilliant opportunities. Probably only had one all game. So it's a really difficult position for Leicester because who is going to put that ball in the back of the net is the question we keep asking. Worrying signs early on, it must be said, but still early days. And obviously a lot of change and a little shadow overhanging at the club. I just wonder if Charlton are going to be able to produce this every single week because they've been rock solid so far. I do think Leicester have got the sort of players to harm them with a lot of pace on the break. And maybe with the onus being on Charlton to attack a bit at home, I think they might concede their first goal of the season here. I don't think Leicester have got the players to take lots of chances. Charlton still look fairly solid. So I'm actually going to go for a goal apiece on the counter-attack and start with a bold call. 2 Championship's favourite scorelines in a row, 1-1. The second early kickoff is between two sides that had very different fortunes late on last weekend. It is Hull City versus Blackburn Rovers. Hull, of course, won it in the 93rd minute with new signing Ollie McBurney becoming the instant hero. A pretty average performance, it must be said, defensively against Oxford. Gave up a lot of chances to a side that don't create much on the road. Had a lot of the ball, dominated a lot of the game, and we questioned when Hull had to do that. Would they have the quality to do it in attack? The answer was yes. Were they able to do it whilst being defensively solid? The answer is definitely a jury still out so far because it didn't look particularly good. But promising signs, I think, in the last couple of games. Definitely a worry defensively, though. When they set up behind the ball on the road at Coventry, they looked all right. Against Wrexham and Oxford, when they tried to take the ascendancy in the game, they looked so vulnerable to the counter-attack. For Blackburn, another defeat, a late goal conceded against Birmingham City. They were ahead going into the 90th minute before the penalty and then a late goal from Lyndon Dykes. In truth, it was a pretty poor game overall. There wasn't a lot for either side. A difficult start for Blackburn. 2 tough games against West Brom and Birmingham, but both of them just falling short. Obviously out of the cup as well. And we know there was already pressure on Ishmael before that run at the end of last season. I do worry for him a bit here if he's not able to pick points up. But we've said Hull City are going to try and be in the ascendancy at home. And we saw they're incredibly vulnerable to the counter-attack. And if there's one thing that suits Blackburn, it is that. Because they have got players who can on the break be a threat. A Hashi, Cantwell's creative, but there's a lot of pace, there's a lot of quality going forward. And I do wonder if this game just suits Blackburn a bit. I don't think either side will be keeping a clean sheet based on what we've seen so far. There's part of me that wanted to go really high scoring. But I'm going to go for Blackburn Rovers to get their first win of the season. I wouldn't be shocked by any means if it goes just the other way. On a little bit of a hunch here, I'm going to go for Blackburn by 2-1. I just think the style of the game might suit them, with Hull dominating the ball and them on the counter. And the final early kickoff is between two sides that picked up their first win last weekend. It is Swansea City versus Watford. Let's start with Swansea, who probably for the second week in a row, not involved in the best of games, but were dominant against Sheffield United. Restricted the visitors to no shots on target. And while Sheffield United were an absolute bomb scare defensively in their first 2 games in the League and Cup, they did have a lot of chances going forward in the first league game against Bristol City. Swansea stifled them really well. Didn't create an awful lot themselves. Yes, had chances, but not many great opportunities. But in the end, got the win. So I think it's going to be a steady rather than spectacular season for Swansea. But perhaps what they need, and a really good result for Alan Sheehan as permanent manager to get himself off the mark in the league. Following up from the cup win, it's been a good week for them, as it has for Watford, who started really well against Queen's Park Rangers. Obviously a bit of a nervier second half, but Watford had the best chances in the game. They looked a real threat going forward. I was actually pretty impressed with them for large parts of last weekend. Obviously a very unnecessary red card late on to a key player, which is going to harm them for the next couple of weeks, and we do have to factor in for this one. But I do think they looked a threat when they got any ascendancy. So definitely better from Watford this weekend. A suggestion that they're going to be relatively strong at home, as they were early last season under Tom Cleverley. But away from home, I still have my grave concerns. They created next to nothing against Charlton. Can actually see this being a really poor game because Swansea haven't been involved in a thriller yet this season. Watford away from home were really poor at Charlton. I think this is the sort of contender for a 0-0 or a 1-0 either way. And based on the home and away form of each so far, I'm going to go for Swansea to nick it by 1-0. But don't think this will be a great match at all. On to the 3 p.m. kickoffs, and we start at St Andrews with Birmingham City versus Oxford United. For Oxford, a really worrying start. 2 defeats in 2 against 2 of the 5 relegation favourites with the bookies in pre-season. A loss away at Hull City in the 93rd minute. A really frustrating day because defensively, they looked poor again. They got outplayed for the most part. We know Oxford aren't going to dominate the ball on the road and have all of the territory in a match. But while they looked a threat at times on the counter, they were so ropey at the back. And we mentioned it the first week of the season. We expected them to probably be more solid at home to Pompey. They didn't take their chances and they're giving up opportunities in every game, which is a really worrying combination at this stage, actually. For Birmingham, you've got to give them credit. They keep going. They've got fitness. They've got quality off the bench. They've got a well-rounded squad. You've got Lyndon Dykes, who's almost sort of a forgotten man up front there, coming on and being a hero late on. There is so much firepower in that squad. It wasn't a great game of football, and I'm sort of seeing the similarities to Ipswich a couple of years earlier already, where they've come up, they've been really open, they've been really aggressive at home, and in a way, played in a slightly different style to try and be more consistent over the course of the season. I was really impressed with them when we watched the Carabao Cup game in midweek. Even with changes, they look such a strong squad. As it stands at the moment, I think this is a very comfortable home win. They might give up one on the counter, which I don't think they will. I'm going to go for a big win and a first clean sheet for Birmingham. I'm going 3-0 for the home side. As we approach the midway point with another side involved in that thriller last weekend, it is Coventry City versus QPR. Let's start with the visitors, who away at Watford were opened up quite a lot. I said it when they came in, I'm a big fan of Julian Stefan. I didn't know he had the side that suited him straight away, and I didn't think they'd done enough work early on. They've perhaps maybe resolved their biggest problem now in Richard Kone joining the club this week. They've needed and have been crying out for a goal scorer, and that is exactly what they need up there. However, what I didn't bank on at the start of this season is how poor they were going to look defensively. Now, I think it will get there. It's a slight change in style. It's going to take a little bit of time. Whereas for the host Coventry, a bit of a mixed bag, isn't it? A brilliant threat against Derby County, albeit against an awful defensive display. But Coventry at the back did not cover themselves in glory either. And I got a bit of stick when I put them missing out on the top 6 this year. And I said the reason was, although they've improved in the fullback area in terms of players, I wasn't convinced the way Lampard was going to set them up that they would improve defensively overall. And while they've stuck with the original back 4 for now from last season, I really worry that they're not going to be able to keep enough clean sheets and not get enough points on the road, because against better opposition than Derby, they wouldn't have got the opportunity to score 5 goals there, and he would have fallen to a 3-1 defeat. And Coventry can't afford to do that. At home, we know they're going to be solid, but they were frustrated by Hull City. Very hard to call. It's going to depend on how QPR set up. When a team comes at them, we know they can create chances. I'm going to go for a tense game here. I think it's going to be tight. Wouldn't surprise me if it was a draw, but I will back Coventry just to edge it based on QPR's defensive performances so far. So 2-1 to the host, Coventry to make it 7 from 9. Into the second half we go, and 2 sides that had a lift off last weekend. It is Norwich City versus Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough with a brilliant 3-0 win away at Millwall. Surprise result of the weekend for me. A fantastic result. Not all plain sailing. In the first half, they came under a lot of pressure. On another day, could have fallen behind. Some great opportunities missed. Some big defensive efforts. Millwall did have a lot of opportunities to get ahead in that game. But in the second half, Middlesbrough adjusted slightly and they looked fantastic. And late on took advantage as well. Alfie Jones getting a first goal for the club. A late one in stoppage time as they kept going as well. And they are a side that are building firepower now. They've added this week Naipan as well on loan from City, who an old Football Manager wonder kid, you know, a game I love, and a very talented young player. So having watched him a little bit in Norway, I think they've got a superstar this year if they utilise him right. I guess my worry with that is, will they potentially then lose a Hackney or an Azaz or someone instead? But if they can keep them all together, that is a fantastic effort. But still defensively, a little bit ropey, despite the clean sheet. But a really good win away at Millwall, and a result that I don't think many saw coming. For Norwich, a fantastic win on the road. We mentioned how poor they've been away from home in recent years. This time, they started well. They were 2 up in 15 minutes. Yes, partly due to poor defending. They created good chances. Yes, they still gave plenty up. They gave away a penalty. They gave away nearly 20 shots on goal. They never looked solid at the back on the road. However, for as long as Josh Sargent is there, Norwich City are a playoff contender. In my opinion, he is the best striker in the division. I wonder how long he's going to be there. I still think they're going to be better at home this season against the sides that come out and play against them. And I think Rob Edwards will try to do that with Middlesbrough. And we've seen, despite 2 league clean sheets, they can collapse as they did at home to Doncaster. I think this game is going to be pretty interesting. And I'm going to go for Norwich to nick it. I know they lost at home to Millwall on the opening day, but they're normally so good at Carrow Road. I'm going to go for Norwich to nick it just about on firepower by 2-1 in what I think will be a pretty exciting game. On to one that might be a little less exciting. It is Preston North End versus Ipswich Town. Maybe that gives you a clue into my prediction, as Ipswich got another 1-1 draw, which, to be honest, you say on paper, a slow start, 2 points, but the 3 promotion favourites are Ipswich, Southampton and Birmingham with the bookies, and they're the 2 teams they've played. They've picked up points. Against Southampton, a better performance, a fairly even game between 2 good sides. Ipswich struggling to put the ball away, which was a little surprise. Didn't create many shots on target, but you could see that both of those teams have more gears to go through. And I think as they hit form, as they get settled, once the transfer window closes, we'll see the best of them. Of course, Hutchinson has now moved on from Ipswich, the one we probably expected to go. And it gives that chance to your Schmodicks, to your Philogene Clarks to shine. None of them maybe did last weekend, but I think given time they will do. So a really decent result for Ipswich. 2 good points given the teams they've played. And now they've got to back it up when they're expected to win against teams further down the division. But Preston had that against Leicester last weekend and they managed to get the win. It was a really decent Preston performance. I've been pleasantly surprised by them this season. We knew they were going to give up the ball, but we said they sort of signed a lot of steady, solid championship players. And I just think they'll have one of those seasons where they'll be comfortable, they'll be all right. And if they can pick up wins like that, then fantastic. They created good opportunities. Of course, still gave some up on the break, but Preston are a decent side and Paul Heckingbottom doing a solid job so far. With 4 points out of 6, they're going to be optimistic going into this game. I do think Ipswich will get their first win of the season. They're playing against a side for the first time that aren't expected to be in promotion contention. And I think we'll get to see the old Ipswich from the Championship a couple of years ago with a 1-0 away win and a solid defensive display. Let's see if I'm right. 4 to go and we move on to, well, the calamity side of the season so far. The surprise for all the wrong reasons against the surprise negative result from last weekend. It is Sheffield United versus Millwall. I mentioned it a bit earlier in the Boro section. Millwall could have been a couple up at half-time against them. Played really well in the first half. Didn't take their opportunities, which is something we've seen as a pattern over the years from them. However, in the second half, uncharacteristic poor defending, giving away goals from set pieces, things like that. It's not what we associate with Millwall. But there are going to be those little challenges as Alex Neil still tries to find a balance between a side, make them more aggressive without giving up that defensive solidity. But look, it could have been a very different result if they put chances away in the first half. So I'm not going to read too much into that just yet. For Sheffield United, it's just been an unmitigated disaster. We saw that they were a defensive mess against Bristol City and Birmingham. In the cup game in midweek, they were awful. I don't know how they stayed in the game. Obviously, largely due to Gus Harmer coming on and putting one in from halfway. Otherwise, they created nothing. They should have conceded 6, 7, 8. It was appalling. Same against Bristol City before that. And then they tried to be a bit more robust and a bit more solid against Swansea, which to an extent they were. They didn't give up many clear opportunities. However, it meant they then created nothing. And you've got a side who finished on 90 plus points last year who have not had a shot on target away from home. And Sheffield United have got to be very careful at the moment. I know it's going to take Sellers a bit of time, but they look a shadow of what they were last season. We mentioned they lost key players from the spine, but they've got to pick something up this weekend. They've got to get off the mark this season. And I think they might, because they can be more aggressive as they were against Bristol City. And Millwall haven't maybe got that stunning, consistent pace on the break. They've got a very different style of team. Yes, they've still got a threat at times, but I think they'll be a little bit lower scoring. So I'm actually going to go for the Blades to get their first point of the season. I don't think it will be convincing. I'm going to go for the Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1. And given what happened last weekend, I think both might take that result. 3 to go, and we move on to the surprise table toppers who are away at one of the promotion favourites. It is Southampton versus Stoke City. Of course, we've got to bear in mind that Stoke have played at home to Derby and away to Sheff Wednesday, but 6 goals scored, a real attacking threat, a positive start for Stoke. And do you know what I liked about the Sheff Wednesday game? I know they gave up chances, but they looked a menacing threat going forward. They looked a little bit like a Mark Robins team, as we saw at Coventry when they were chasing the playoffs. No, I'm not saying they're going to do that this season. But yes, defensively, still a lot of question marks to answer against both Derby and against Sheff Wednesday, who, in fairness, are 2 of what are expected to be the poorer attacks in the division this year. But they've got some good players going forward now. I mentioned Sorba Thomas being a key signing. Delivery and quality, whether it's set pieces, whether it's a cross into the box, whether it's passing range. Sorba Thomas is a creative threat. It wouldn't surprise me if he got the most assists in a championship this year. And he picked 2 up against Sheff Wednesday as well. Mabama's starting to look a really good sign in there. Manherv obviously got a couple as well. Jamie Donnelly's coming too. We mentioned they've gambled on 2 or 3 younger strikers. If they can get 1 or 2 of them firing, could be a very good season. You've then got a bit of experience defensively with Baker staying, with Cresswell's there, Ben Wilmot the skipper as well. I think signs are good for Stoke that they might finally have a half-solid season, but this is their first big test. They've played against 2 of the relegation favourites. Now they go away to Southampton, who were, bar one defensive disaster early on, pretty solid against Ipswich. I've been impressed with them so far. Yes, against Wrexham, they gave up chances on the break, and that was partly during desperation to try and get back into the game. Again, they went behind in this match, which they can't afford to keep doing, but they were much more solid at 1-1 this time. So I think, again, Southampton have shown they've got gears to go through. Will Still's trying to find his best attacking combination still. I overall think it's been a good start for both, but ultimately, despite Stoke's 2 wins, Southampton should be too good here. They might give up a goal, but I'm going to go for a home win and a clean sheet. I'm going to go for 2-0 to Southampton. And the penultimate game is at the Hawthorns, and another side that have picked up 6 from 6. It is West Bromwich Albion versus Portsmouth. Pompey, of course, had a difficult start after that 1-0 win away at Oxford, a 2-1 defeat at home to Norwich, a missed penalty. I'm sorry, Colby Bishop, I cursed you saying you'd score last weekend. And defensively, you cannot give up goals the way they have at the start. It was a huge problem for them last year on the road. If that copies over into their home form this year, it could be a very tricky season for Pompey. I thought defensively they were really poor, but they've always got an attacking threat at home. However, as we mentioned last year, they had the worst away record in the Championship on the road. And this time, going to a West Brom side that have picked up 2 very different wins this season, I'm not sure it's going to be a great day for them. West Brom was solid, but did struggle at times to break Blackburn down on the opening day. And then at Wrexham, a really interesting game actually, quite an entertaining early kickoff. They gave up some good chances to Wrexham, who were obviously going to be quite aggressive at home, but they took advantage on the counter. And we saw something that perhaps we've associated with West Brom not having the last couple of years, which is a ruthless streak. I think Price is starting to come into his own and look a real superstar. And look, Daryl DK's not going to be for any time soon. Madger picks up his fair share of injuries and Hegebo's still settling in. So for Price to deliver at the moment is great. I still have question marks about them at the back. They have brought people in. Of course, Bielik's coming now, was on the bench at the weekend. Maybe they'll get more solid in time. But look, Ryan Mason started pretty well. While he's learning, while he's making mistakes, they've still picked up 2 wins from 2. This one is a bit of a challenge because Pompey looked okay at Oxford, but they're always going to give up chances. And if West Brom can keep that solidity at home, I think they'll get a win here. I'm not expecting an exciting one. I was tempted to go for a couple of goals, but do you know what? I'll go a bit lower scoring this weekend. I'll go for West Brom by 1-0. And the final game almost certainly won't be low scoring as Wrexham host Sheff Wednesday. Both sides looking to get off the mark in the league this season. Wrexham, that late consolation against West Brom, had a lot of good chances in that match, but defensively, the Achilles heel. We've mentioned it before. They have had some tough times. The first season in the National League under the new ownership where goals cost them at the other end, to be honest. So 8 conceded in 2 league games and a cup match, all against Championship opposition. But also, bear in mind that so far, Wrexham have played Southampton and West Brom, and they've created bundles of chances. And these are 2 sides that a lot will have in their top 6 or 8 in the league. So coming at home to Sheffield Wednesday is probably where the season really starts. If Wrexham are going to have a comfortable year and push even beyond that, they have got to be consistent in games like this. Sheffield Wednesday have been better than I expected so far this season. However, as we saw, what happens when you go a couple of goals down in a game, that's when the chances then start to come at the other end. And in another day, Stoke could have had 4 or 5, as could Leicester on the opening day. So they are giving up those chances. But at the moment, while this situation drags on, they've just got to firefight and do the best they can. Fair play to them. They're setting up, they're turning up, and they're putting in 100% effort. But I'm not sure that's going to be enough this time. I think they will get a goal at Wrexham because defensively they've been really poor so far this year. I think Wrexham have too much firepower. I think they will win this game. They've got a lot of physicality. They'll get balls in the box as we've seen. And I'm not sure this team will be able to cope with it. So I'm going to go for Wrexham to get their first win of the season by 3-1 against Sheffield Wednesday. So with that out the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for this weekend. 2 teams to score 3 and win at home. The 2 automatically promoted sides. Birmingham City against Oxford. Wrexham at home to Sheffield Wednesday. I've gone for Ipswich to get their first win of the season away at Preston North End. And a double championship favourite scoreline to start the match week with the early kickoff on Saturday and the Friday night fixture. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my predictions though. Give us yours in the comments, and if you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out when we return this time next week to look ahead to match week 4. If you want to make sure you don't miss anything else, do chuck a thumbs up on the video, subscribe and turn that notification bell on. But for now, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you again next week for match week 4, and good luck to all of your sides this weekend. Let's hope it's goals galore yet again.